The old Great Wall Steed would have to have the dubious honour of being one of the worst four-wheel drive utes I've tested over the years. Thankfully, that model is no longer available anymore. It's been replaced by this. This is the GWM Ute. Yes, Great Wall has rebranded, and this is called the Ute. We've got Canon L specification, which sits right in the middle of the range, and this is an all new model. New platform, new chassis, new engine, new just about everything. So does this new Ute have what it takes to make a dent in the very competitive four-wheel drive Ute segment in Australia? There's only one way to find out, I reckon. Let's go for a drive. With a range starting from 33,990 for Canon specification and going up to 4990 for Canon X, our tester has an asking price of 37,990. The new GWM Canon is much bigger than the previous generation and has matured a lot from a styling point of view, both from the outside and the inside. These seat materials are shared with the lower spec Canon as well, but you do get bits of real leather in the top spec X, although we haven't seen that specification just yet. But for mid specification and for the asking price of this Canon, it is impressive. I'm fairly comfortable behind the wheel here. I've got decent adjustment, electric adjustment through the seat here. There's tilt adjustment via the steering wheel here, but no reach. So you can't get as well dialed in from behind the wheel as other Utes, but I have to say I'm still comfortable regardless. This infotainment display here, it's big and it's easy to use. The menu is a little bit strange, but I did find most functions easily enough. Special mention to the reversing camera, it's pretty good. You throw it in reverse, and as you can see here, you've got a 360 view camera. The clarity is quite good, but you've also got this cool function of being able to virtually sort of look around the car at different modes to see how you're going in tight spots. Reminds me of a Land Rover Defender, but they're obviously a lot more expensive than this Canon. We've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity in this infotainment display. It fills up the full screen, it's easy to use, it's got good clarity, and it kind of makes up for the operating system not necessarily being the best or the slickest in the segment. I think most people will just plug their phone in and use whatever they have on there. Although I'm interested to know if you agree with that. Do you use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in a Ute like this, or would you prefer to have a good operating system on its own? Let me know in the comments below. Below that infotainment display here, you've got all your aircon controls. There's a volume dial there, rear locker button, always good to see a locking rear diff in a four-wheel drive Ute. And below that, you've got a bit of a spot for something like your wallet and that sort of thing. A couple of USB points, 12 volts. Another spot here, that's kind of good just to chuck your keys in when you're driving. 2 cup holders and a decent sized center console. And I have to say, build quality, just when you sort of twist things and move them around, does seem quite good. This doesn't feel flimsy. Before I hop in and show you the space and amenities in the second row of this new Canon Ute, just show you under the seat, there is some handy storage. Under there you could fit a few bits and bobs, not a whole lot, but it's handy nonetheless. And also, you can pop this seat back forward as well. There's a bottle jack stowed in here behind the seat, and your other stuff like a safety triangle and the tools you need to change a tyre are in a pocket here behind the seat. And there is a little bit of extra space there for some things if you wanted to use it. Now let's check out space. Now, I think I've said this in a few reviews in the past, my seating position is relatively close to the wheel. I'm not overly tall and I just tend to sit really close to the steering wheel. So in here, I've got a lot of leg room, but I have to say, in comparison to most other Utes, this does rate quite well. Headroom is good, the seat is comfortable. This doesn't feel like a cheap Ute to sit in. You've got air vents here, you've got a 220 volt outlet down there, USB point as well. It's definitely not short on bells and whistles back here, especially when you consider the sharp asking price. Because GWM haven't skimped on the wheelbase of this Canon, the tub is a good size. You can see here we've got a spray-in tub liner, that's good. You can throw stuff in the back and you're not going to ruin the paint straight away. You've got 4 tie-down points, 1 in each corner there, and looks like you've got 4 grommets as well if you want to run some wiring into the back of this thing at a later date. This tailgate is damped. Doesn't help with the lifting, although it is relatively light, but when you do drop it, doesn't clang, it just drops down nice and gently. There's one other cool party trick about this Canon in the back. Built into this tailgate is a nifty step. Pop that out. I've only ever seen this on a Ford F-150 before, definitely not on the Utes available in Australia. Allows you to get up into the tub, nice and easy. Under the bonnet is a new 2-litre turbo diesel engine which makes 120 kilowatts and 400 newton meters that runs through an 8-speed automatic transmission. There is no option for a manual, but you do get a locking rear differential and proper low-range gearing. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to take this Cannon off-road into the bush for a test, but we will get around to that in the future. One of the first things you notice about driving this new GWM Ute is that the accelerator pedal is quite touchy. You could be confused into thinking, oh geez, this thing's got a bit of grunt, it's pretty gutsy off the line, but you press the pedal even further and that's kind of all it's got already. Not to say the performance is too bad, it's fairly middling for this segment, especially towards the lower end of the segment. Doesn't feel too slouchy, it's got a little bit of response there. But it would be nicer if that performance was set across a wider range of the accelerator pedal, just so you can control it a little bit better, especially at low speeds. Now you can adjust it slightly. You've got a dial down here that's got Eco, Normal and Sport mode, but the bad news is it doesn't do a whole lot for that touchy accelerator pedal. It mostly does gearbox calibration, just lazies off or tightens up the shift ratios. It's pretty smooth, makes good decisions, you don't really need to worry about it too much. Another thing to note is that this car is pretty quiet to drive. For a turbo diesel Ute, let's say 10 years ago, this would have been absolutely at the head of its class. It's amazing how fast this segment has moved in terms of refinement. And this GWM Ute, even though it is one of the cheapest in this segment, it's quite good in that regard. It's not one of the best, but it's commendable. Ride comfort and steering is mostly pretty good. It does tend to be a little bit firm, but because this thing has such a long wheelbase, it does tend to soak up bumps reasonably well. You don't get a big harsh hit through the rear end or through the front for that matter, over things like speed bumps and that sort of thing, but it's not as polished as some of the others in the class. The GWM steering is an interesting one. It's got quite a light feeling off center, but then it gets quite heavy as you turn into corners and that sort of thing. It does feel a little bit vague and disconnected at times as well. Probably not up to snuff when you compare it to the rest of the segment, which is increasingly car-like every year. However, once again, this is a four-wheel drive Ute for driving around town, to the worksite and back, on the highway, that sort of thing. It's up to the job. Some other important details to include: a 3,000 kilo braked towing capacity, 232 mils of ground clearance or 194 mils when fully laden, a 1,050 kilo payload, and a claimed fuel economy of 9.4 litres per 100 Ks. The new GWM Ute is still pretty cheap, but it's no longer nasty. This is leagues ahead of the old Ute that it replaced. It might not still handle or ride or steer or present in some situations as well as the established competition, but it's caught right up to the pack now. If you're going to be cross-shopping this Ute against anything else, I'd recommend the Mitsubishi Triton. It's more expensive, but not as much as the others in the segment. In any case, if you're looking for champagne on a bit of a beer budget, this is worth a look. What do you think about this new Ute? Let us know in the comments below. Do you reckon this has what it takes to make a dent in the Australian Ute segment, or will it barely leave a mark? Be keen to see what you think. And of course, while you're here, consider subscribing to Car Advice on YouTube and hit that like button. Thanks for watching.